My first question is, how many or is any of you already a product owner? Ah, Vijay, come on. You're a trainer. Okay, so nobody's a product owner. Does any of you come from a BA background, a business analyst or an IT BA or that kind of background? No.
Yeah,
Does
yeah,
anybody,
yes.
sorry?
Yeah, Ranjan here. I
Yeah,
was earlier into a BA role and currently working as a Scrum Master for two teams. Yeah.
fantastic, fantastic. That is Vijay, yeah?
Ranjan.
Ranjan, sorry. Right. Just to, I'm not trying to discourage you from being a Scrum Master, but a BA, a guy who with a BA background is ideal to become a product owner because your BA skills are exactly what is needed for a product owner. Anyways, all right. Anybody from the traditional background? Anybody who's a traditional PM? Prince to waterfall? No. All right. Okay. Okay. So we start. But before I start, the purpose of this is that we are trying to figure out how do backlogs evolve, right? Uh, Even before what I will be showing you in the presentation is actually something I actually draw on the whiteboard, but I made a PPT out of it, and I'm trying to use that. Okay, so this is also something which, as Netra has said, when you introduce agile into an organization. So when I go into an organization, my first thing, that's another presentation, which is not the topic for today. Is when how you introduce agile into an organization. The second step is this, because people in organizations, they have Googled, they have found out, they have talked to friends, they know there is agile something called a backlog. They don't know what it is. They don't know how it comes. Where does the backlog come from? How does it come? How does it evolve? What happens? What are the steps? What goes on? How do you actually create that backlog? All right. That is what today's topic is. I am going to try and share with you how a backlog evolves. How do you even start a backlog? Where does it come from? That's number one. And number two, as we always say in Agile, we are not doing something different, we are doing it differently. The same thing what you used to do in Prince2 and Waterfall, we're just doing it differently. So we are not here to break your nice, beautiful world. We are not here to break your organization. We are not here to break your company. We are not here to break your systems. We are here to help you to make them more efficient. How can we do it differently to make it more efficient? Okay, so let me start with a story. I am going to tell you a story. All right. As all of you know, I live in the UK. So we go back many, many years, and there was this big rich guy, right? So let us call him Big Boss. So we have a big boss, and the big boss is a very rich man. He's not a millionaire, he's a billionaire. All right. We're talking about a guy who's a big boss, who's loads of tons of money, huge company, everything. And he has a very nice, beautiful girlfriend. Right. And as spring is over and we are getting into summer, that girlfriend tells him, "Hey, let's plan a holiday." He says, "Fine. Okay, no problems. What do you want to do?" "Let's go for a skiing holiday." Right. So, okay. Now, obviously, he's not the only guy planning a skiing holiday. Everybody in Europe wants to have a skiing holiday. So, when the big boss goes around trying to make his bookings, he finds out there's no tickets available. No airline has got any tickets because he wants to go to Switzerland. He wants to go to Davos, which is the biggest skiing resort, and he wants to take his girl there and he wants to enjoy, have the fun of his time. but there's no tickets. What to do? What do I do now? So he's a big man. He calls up his friends, he calls up his connections, he calls up his people and says, hey, what the hell is going on? Why can't I get tickets? No, sorry, you can't. What's the solution? Well, what really happened was end of the day, he chartered a plane, but it gave him an idea that, hey, there is a shortage. If people want to go on holiday, they can't get bookings, right? They can't get flights. So the big boss comes back to his office the next day and he calls his CFO. Hey, I want to have a chat. He says, yeah. What do you have? And, sorry, any questions? No.
Oh, carry on, please.
Yeah. So the big boss tells his CFO a one-line sentence. He says, go buy a plane. He says, what? Go buy a plane. I need a plane. I need to take my girlfriend on a holiday and I can't get seats. I want a plane. You got enough money, go buy a plane. He says, hang on, you serious? I told you, go buy a plane. So the CFO is sweating, comes back to his office, and he calls somebody like Sid. Sid, yeah, Sid goes running, yeah, yes sir, what do you want? Order from the big boss, yeah, go buy a plane. Hang on, go buy a plane, yeah, go buy a plane. Well, a plane, that's not something I can get from Tesco in the US or D-Mart in India or Atlantic in Canada or, one of the superstores. It's slightly bigger than their shelf space. What do you mean go buy a plane? Don't ask me. The big boss ka order hai, go buy a plane. That is where we start. Go buy a plane. That is our topic. Go buy a plane. And now we get on to the So there we are. We got a blank canvas. And we have our big boss who tells us, go buy a plane. Now I am the guy who has been tasked with that. I am the guy who has been charged with that. I got a simple statement there, go buy a plane. I say, okay, like I said, I can't go to the supermarket and buy one. But yes, I can start the process, maybe talk to a couple of the aircraft manufacturers and da-di-da-di-da. And I do that. And I say, okay, maybe 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line, I shall get that plane. They will deliver that plane to me. Now, when they deliver that plane, where am I going to keep that plane? Yeah, that plane is not going to come in a package in the post, right? They are going to fly it in and they're going to say, well, you ordered a plane, here's your plane. So where do I keep that plane? Now the big boss has got a nice, huge, big mansion and he's got a nice, big garage, but it's not big enough to take a plane, is it? So I need to think about where will I keep that plane? So if I need to think around where I keep that plane, then I need a hangar. You need a hangar where you going to keep the plane. Are you guys with me? Please don't hesitate to jump in with questions, yeah, as I'm speaking.
Shit, what is hangar then?
A hangar is where you keep a plane. If you go to the airport, when the plane comes in and the passengers get off, after that, where did that plane go? It goes into hangar you can think of it as a garage for the plane.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a huge thing. I mean, it's not as small as your garage, obviously. Right. So I need to have a hangar because when that plane comes, I need to keep it somewhere. And then I start thinking, okay, I need a hangar. Now, hangars are only in airports. So what will I do next? Which is the airport nearest to me? Is it Luton? Because I live in Northampton. For me, Luton is near. What else is available? One was Luton. Maybe I can put it in LGW, stands for London Gatwick. So maybe Gatwick Airport is, well, about the same distance as Luton for me. It's about 40, 45 minutes. Whether I go to Luton or whether I go to Gatwick. Or shall I look for a hangar in Birmingham? Because that is also 1 hour's distance for me. It's not a big deal. I can go and, park it there. So I need to first think where I want to hire that hangar. Do I want to take it in Luton? Do I want to take it in Gatwick? Is Birmingham preferable for me? And then a lot of other questions will come in there because now I have to think, where will I get the best deal? Is Luton cheaper for me? Is Gatwick cheaper for me? Is Birmingham cheaper for me? And I can't take that decision based purely on the price because I also have to think what facilities will I have if I park my plane at Luton, if I park my plane at Gatwick, if I park my plane at Birmingham, what are the differences? Yeah, all the three airports are pretty near to me. None of them is very far. So then I have to think about the next step. The next step, as you can see here, I was just saying, is these three arrows which I've drawn here. These are maybe the three questions which I have. Number one, what is the rent? Number two, what are the facilities? Number three, what is the ease of access? Now, when I start doing that, I've done that for Luton. I'll also have that do the same exercise for Gatwick and the same exercise for Birmingham, right? Okay, so now let us suppose that we have crossed this thing. We have decided whether it was Luton, whether it was Gatwick, whether it was Birmingham. One of these three, I will have made my investigation, I'll have done my research, I will have found out stuff, and I'll have come to some kind of a ballpark idea that, okay, maybe Luton is nice for me. So I found a place. Remember, that plane got delivered. I found a place to park it. Let us say that is Luton. It could be one of the three, any of the three. But anyways, I've decided one of them, and I said, okay, I'll park my plane here. Great. Now, I've parked the plane, all nice and thing. Now, one day, my big boss wants to actually fly, right? Now, the big boss has got a nice, shiny red Ferrari, which he drives all over the country. And he's great. He drives fast. He's great at it. But remember, he doesn't know how to fly a plane. He only knows how to drive a car. So the next step I have to think of is the day that guy wants to fly, when big boss actually wants to take his girlfriend out of the country and he wants to go out somewhere. Hang on. That plane is going to need something, yeah? To fly, you need fuel, right? That plane needs fuel to fly. So like the same way as we did in the first step when we said we needed a hangar and we said, which airport will I park it at? My next step is, well, that plane has to fly, it needs fuel. What do I do about that? So maybe I talk to Esso. He's one of the fuel guys in the UK, right? And maybe I'll also go and talk to Shell. Yeah, there's another supplier. And maybe I'll also go and have a chat with BP, British Petroleum. Because these are the three major suppliers of fuel in the country. Well, I live in the UK, so I'm talking about the UK. I'm sure India has equally good suppliers. And like in the case of the hangar, I will have again my research to do. So I will, what are the price? What are the facilities? Are they giving me any credit? Do they give some kind of other facilities? That was my second step was, okay, if the boss wants to go out one day, he needs to fly, then I need fuel, right? Okay, so I've got my plane, I've got it parked in one of the airports. I've also planned and managed to fuel it up. I've got the fuel needed to fly that plane, right? But remember, my boss doesn't know how to fly that plane. So to actually fly that plane, I shall need a crew, right? Now I need a crew. When we say crew, we always think, oh, we've got a pilot. Yeah, great. That's great. That's the flight crew. So I have to now think in terms of who is going to fly this plane. So there has to be a pilot, there must be a co-pilot, there must be a navigator, and there must be a flight engineer. But the story doesn't end there. That's the guys who are going to fly the plane. What about the big boss sitting inside? So besides the flight crew, we need the cabin crew, right? And after the cabin crew, and before you actually take off, you need the ground crew. So when we say crew, it's not just the flight guys. There's a flight crew, there's a cabin crew, and there's a ground crew. And just like above, again, my three questions for the flight, I just said we need a pilot, we need a co-pilot, and we need a flight engineer, right? For the cabin crew, we'll need a flight attendant, a flight purser, and a hostess, right? Or a steward. And when we say about the ground crew, we need the ground engineers, the guys who actually fuel the plane, who provide the grease, who check the tires, who check the da-di-da-di-da, and all of that. So, okay, now I've got my flight crew. I remember we started go by a plane. That plane got delivered. I found a hangar to park it in one of the airports. Then I found somebody to supply me the fuel for the plane to actually fly. And now we're at the stage where we found a ground crew. We found the flight crew. We found the cabin crew. Hey, I'm all set to go. Hang on just a minute. Where is that big boss going? He wants to take his girlfriend for a skiing holiday. A skiing holiday means he wants to go to Switzerland. He wants to go to Davos. That's where the biggest skiing resort is. So when that plane lands there, I need foreign liaison because I must have the liaison, for example, with the Swiss guys, the Swiss airports. And he might not go there directly. He might go, let us say, via France. Then I have to talk to the guys in France as well. Or he might decide to go via Frankfurt in Germany. So I need liaison with those guys as well. Because we don't know how he's going, what flight path he's going to take. So once again, our research starts that if you're going to go to Switzerland, do I have the liaison, do I have the contact, do I have the rapport with the Swiss engineers, with the Swiss flight control guys, with the Swiss airport authorities, with the Swiss aviation system? The same thing for France, the same thing for Germany, right? And so on and so on. So depending on which countries I'm planning on, I need to think about all these factors, right? And finally, he's had his holiday and he comes back home. What about the maintenance? He went to Switzerland, he went to France, he went to Germany, he went to wherever hell he wanted to go, and he's had his holiday, he's come back. Once he comes back, then that plane needs now maintenance. It has to be maintained. It's not just going there and coming back, right? So we need the mechanical guys who are going to check the engines when he comes back, right? We're going to need the electrical and electronic guys who are going to check the electronics of the plane. And we're going to need the external guys, right, who are going to check the exterior of the plane and check whether there's nothing wrong with that. And again, my 3 questions there. So if I talk about the mechanical guys, there must be somebody who's a mechanical engineer. There has to be somebody who's an aeronautical engineer. There's got to be somebody who's looking after the plane engines. On the electrical and electronic side, somebody to check the cabins, somebody to check the navigation system, somebody to check the sensors. On the external side, somebody to check whether the wings are working properly, if the louvers are working properly, and so on and so forth. So can you guys see how we have just managed? We started with 1 point, go by a plane, right? And how we have now managed to break that into elements, right? So we need a hangar, we need a fuel, we need a crew, we need a foreign liaison, we need maintenance. Yeah, I've only taken 5 elements here. There can be so many more. And then how from each element we are breaking down further and going into our 3 questions. What are we doing here? That go by a plane is where we started, right? That is where we started. So what is a hangar? What is a fuel? What is a crew? What is a foreign liaison? Or what is maintenance? These, in agile language, these are our epics. Think of that, each of them as an epic. And if hangar is an epic, then Luton, Gatwick, and Birmingham are the features. And those 3 arrows are the user stories. Are you guys with me?
Yep.
Great, great. So how does this...
Can you repeat, Sid? The epic and features?
Yeah, so I said we started with go by a plane. That was a
Yes.
problem statement. And then we started breaking them down. So these hangar, fuel, crew, foreign liaison, the blue boxes are the epics, right?
Okay.
Then each epic we have broken down into features. Okay, this is a presentation. I've just made 3 of each, but there can be more than 3, obviously, right? So each epic is broken down into features, and each feature is broken down into user stories.
Got it.
Great. So how does this work in Agile? Yeah, this is how we evolve. Now, I'm not, obviously, this is what we have created here is a product backlog. Right from the start, we made it, and this product backlog, which has got features, which has got epics, which has got user stories. So how does this work in Agile, and how does it relate to the old world? So what was it in Agile, and how does it relate to Prince2 and Waterfall? So that first statement we started with was go by a plane. That is our visionary backlog. That is what it is known as. That was the vision. The boss, the big boss had a vision. I want to buy a plane. He tells me, go buy a plane. I just want a plane. I don't care how you're going to do it. I want a plane. That is the vision. The vision is get me a plane. What was that in the Prince2 world? Anybody? It used to be known as the mandate, the project mandate. Going back to where I started, we said, we're not doing anything different, we're just doing it differently. So what used to be known in the Prince2 and Waterfall system as the project mandate, we call it as the visionary backlog, right? And then after that, when we start breaking down and we start saying, okay, you buy a plane, we have to think about, where we're going to park it, where's the fuel going to come from, where the crew going to come from, what the foreign liaison will be, what the maintenance, and how do we manage that? All of these are your epic, right? And what was the epic? Again, nothing different. It was what used to be called as the WS, the work breakdown structure. In the Prince2 Waterfall world, they used to call it the work breakdown structure. In Agile, we call it epic. Yeah. And then those epics, we further go into features, right? So what were the features? They were work streams. In Prince to Waterfall, they used to be known as work streams. And finally, each of those features we broken down into user stories. And those user stories were known in the Prince 2 world as work items. So this is essentially how we evolve backlogs in Agile. We started with one statement saying, go buy a plane. That was a visionary backlog. He just had a crazy idea, well, apparently a crazy idea, where he said, hey, I want a plane, get me a plane. Now, obviously, a big boss doesn't know, how it's going to happen. He doesn't know where it's going to happen. He doesn't know the process of it. But that's what in our world, that's what the customer is, because the customer says the customer has an idea, which might sound like a crazy idea, but hey, hang on, he wants that idea processed, he wants that thing done. And therefore we had this go buy a plane. We started with that. And then we started breaking it down. Yeah, how will I get the plane? Okay, I'll get the plane. Where will I keep it? I'll keep it in a hangar. The day he wants to fly, what will I do? Where will I get the fuel? We found that out. And how will it fly? We need a crew. Yeah. And then, hey, he's going to fly to another country. So I need to have liaison with those countries wherever he wants to go. And once he's had his trip, he's come back, there's going to be a maintenance cycle towards it. So the thing I was trying to explain here, I'm not going into further detail. So we're not going to the sprint backlog, because that is once all of this has been prioritized and all the user stories have been done, only then can we get into the sprint sessions. Yeah, we go into the sprint backlog and so on. But this is basically, the whole idea was to tell you how these backlogs are evolved. So from the visionary backlog to the product backlog to the prioritized product backlog and to the sprint. Any questions?
I have a question here.
Mhm.
Like here, when we say evolution of backlogs in Agile or Prince to Waterfall, is there any difference, like with respect to this example? How is it different from the evolution of backlogs in Agile with respect to Waterfall in this example?
Yeah. The difference is the way we do it. In the Prince 2 and Waterfall world, this was all sequential,
Mm-hmm.
right? In Agile, we don't do it sequential. The difference was in the Prince 2 world, you first worried about the hangar. Only when the hangar is done, we'll think about the fuel. Once the fuel is done, we'll think about the crew. In
Mm-hmm.
Agile, what happens is I start on the hangar. I'm talking to these three guys. At the same time, I'm trying to also talk to SO, Shell, and BP to see what fuel options I have. In the
Mm-hmm.
meanwhile, I'll ask somebody else, hey, go find out, put an advertisement out for my flight crew, put an advertisement for the cabin crew, put the advertisement for the ground crew. So things are happening in parallel. They are not
Mm-hmm.
happening sequentially. They are not happening one after the other, after the third, after the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
All these things, anger, fuel, crew, foreign layers, and maintenance, can all start in parallel.
Okay.
That is the difference.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Sid, on that note itself, I wanted to ask Prajita here. So how do we prioritize the backlog? Basically, because the product owners, like I have faced some of the challenges uh, that if we have the product owner not fully aware of customer priorities, then how do we do it?
Right. Okay. Uh, any questions pertaining to this? Otherwise, I'll close this and then we can have a chat.
Yes, yeah, Ranjan here.
Yeah.
Even I have seen in my project like where my product owner he's once we are doing everything, but at the end of the sprint and all, we are finding out like some way or other those whatever has been discussed, it's somehow because he is not aware fully about the all structures and also and 2 or 3 different stakeholders are also being involved. So some 1 or 2 somehow we are missing. So how
Yeah,
it
yeah,
has to be
yeah,
done
yeah.
in
I'll
that
come to that.
case?
I'll come to that. Okay, let's stop the sharing so we can have a chat. Okay. The first question was, I think, Aparijita was asking about. Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Yeah. So Sid, basically, I wanted to know how do we prioritize the backlog?
All right. Yeah. Okay. So, the backlog, first of all, the prioritization of the backlog is the PO's job. Okay. It is not the Scrum Master's job. It is nobody else's job. It is the PO's job. The role of the product owner is to engage with the business. A. B. Along with the business, in confabulations with the business, in discussion with the business, they do the priority. So, how do they do the priority? Now, there are 1 or 2 ways. The first is, of course, what is going to get me the most value the fastest. That is the first criteria.
Okay.
Yeah. There may be 5 things which are going to give me value. Okay. Something, one feature which is going to give me 10 pounds, one feature which is going to give me 50 pounds, one feature which is going to 100 pounds, and so on and so on. Fine. What is the feature which I can get the fastest? Right. Then I will pick that as my priority number 1. Maybe it is only going to get me 20 pounds. It is not going to give me 100 pounds, but that 20 pounds I will get tomorrow. If I go after the 100 pounds, it will take 1 month. So as a product owner, I not only want to get value, I want to get it fast, because then I can go back to my business and say, hey, look, I've got something. I got 10 pounds for you. Yeah, 100 pounds is coming. Don't worry. But I've got 10 pounds now. So the first criteria is, yes, I want value and I want it fast. That is number 1. Number 2, and was that Ranjan who came with the second question?
Yeah, my question is like at because we have 2 or 3 stakeholders are involved into our project. So what we are lacking is the product owner, where at the end of the sprint something we are like he is not fully probably aware about what need to be done on the technicality level, where need to be changed and all. So it's taking some more time to complete in the particular sprint, and somehow the stakeholders what they need, it's somehow we are not meeting that one. So how
Okay.
to check this
Yeah.
point?
Yeah. The first thing you need to understand is that the product owner and the scrum master are counterparts. Okay. They are the interface between business and tech. That's the first thing to understand. Business does not understand tech. Yeah. Business people, marketing guys, business guys, they're not techies, right? They don't understand tech. And techies don't understand business. I remember in India, we used to have a saying, first class techies are third class businessmen, right? So techies don't understand business, and business guys don't understand techs. And that is the reason you have the role of the scrum master and the product owner, because they play the interface between business and tech. It's the product owner who translates the business requirements into something that the techies will understand. That is his job, which is why I said right at the beginning that somebody who comes from a BA background would make an ideal product owner. The second thing to understand is the priority of business may not always be the priority of the techies. Okay, let me give an example there. Oops. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, because I don't know, I got muted. Is Vijay there?
Yes.
I think. Oh, okay. Because I thought you had disappeared. All right. So I was going to give an example about the priorities, how the priority for the product owner, which is a representative of the business, and the priority for the techs. So let us say I am making an online shop, okay, to sell chocolates. Okay. I am making an online shop where I want to sell chocolates. So the business, when I say business, I mean the product owner, he comes and says, the first priority for the business is to have the login page. Okay, you guys understand? I say, why? Well, if the customer can't log in, how is he going to buy my chocolates? And if he can't buy my chocolates, I can't sell my chocolates. So for the business thinks the first priority is we must have a login page so that my customer, whether it is Girish, whether it is Ranjan, whether it is Aparijita or it is Netra, if they can log in only, then they can buy my chocolates. If they can't log in, how will they buy my chocolates? How will I sell my chocolates? So the business comes and says, my first priority, I want the login page. Now, I am the Scrum Master. I take that idea to my techies, to my tech team, and I say, hey, the business wants the login page. The techies are going to tell me, hang on just a minute. We can't have that as the first priority. Why? I come from a coding background myself. I don't care if you're using PHP or HTML5 or Java or whatever language we are using. Login page, what? Half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours? How long does it take to make a login page? So the techies will tell me, excuse me, Sid, when you say login page, what exactly do you mean? There's a login, there's a password, and you click enter. I said, yeah, takes 1 hour, 2 hours to make that page. Why are you saying, it's not, says, yeah, when you say I'll put in a login and I'll put in a password, what exactly is happening? That is referring a database, right? And the database architect will tell me, hang on, it will take me 2 weeks to create the database. So why will it take you 2 weeks? Because I am not creating the database only for your login page. I am creating the database for the whole site. So I have to think for the whole site. How many tables is that database going to have? How many columns will each table have? How many rows I must accommodate? The whole structure of the database. I'll have to think about it. I can't do that in 1 hour and 2 hours. I need some time. I will design the complete database of which one part is your login page. I'm not creating the database only for a login page. So when business came to me and said, my first priority is login page, my team tells me the first priority is create the database. All right. Are you grasping the difference? The priority, when I said the priority of the business may not always match the priority of the techies.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Scrum Master does not go back and say, this will not happen. That's not the answer. It will happen, but may not happen in this sprint. We are taking up this story. We will create the login page, but it will work when the database is in place. Right? We will make the front end, we will make the interface, we will design everything. The graphics guys will give nice, lovely pictures. You want a background blue color and you want this kind of design, that kind of picture, all that can be done. But it will start working from the second sprint. It will not work tomorrow morning. We will make it tomorrow morning, but it will not work tomorrow morning. So, to coming back to the idea that the priority of the business is not always the first priority for the techies. They will take it up. Now, that communication needs to be happening smoothly and seamlessly. Again, going back, that the product owner and the scrum master have to work together. They have to work in tandem because they are the interface between business and tech. So how to communicate this in a nice, polite language to the business that yes, we are taking this up. We're not saying get rid of it, but be patient. Instead of this, what can we give you in the first sprint? What is it out of, we going back to the backlog. This was a backlog. These were our 5 features. In these 5 features, what feature can be delivered to you in this first sprint? Your login page, we will do it. We're not saying no, but it won't happen in the first sprint. It will happen, but it will not work because the database is yet to be created.
Sid, on a small basic question,
Yeah.
but in all the teams, for
Yeah.
the product owner, they will take business analyst. So what is the main difference? I'm not getting business analyst and the product owner.
The difference at the beginning, I said that a business analyst can become a product owner. Yeah. In fact, it would be ideal as a product owner. But the business analyst is somebody who knows the business inside out, backwards and forwards. The business analyst, unfortunately, in the old system, Prince2 and waterfall system, the only difference was that the business analyst was never empowered. The business analyst has traditionally been treated like an admin guy. Yeah, all he's doing is making the requirements, yeah, creating the SRS document, da 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 da. He never had the power to do anything. He was being treated like a clerk. We are now making him, empowering him, that it is not only that he analyzes the business, but because we make use of his understanding, he has a very great in-depth understanding of that business. That is his core skill, right? And he can become a product owner because he can, because of his skills, he can understand what is going to give us the best value and fastest. We have got 50 features. Which of these is more important? Which of these is going to give me the best, fastest value? Is going to give me more money for my company, for my organization? Is going to earn me more, whatever. It may not be always money. It can be so many other things. It's going to give me a big presence on the internet. It's going to give me more customers. It's going to attract more people. So there can be other things. It is not always that, okay, where can I get 10 pounds? It can also be a lot of other factors. But that a business analyst is the guy who knew that, but he was never empowered to do anything. Now here what we are doing is, ideally speaking, if we can make him a product owner, and believe me, in my own experience, there are at least 3-4 business analysts which I have trained to become product owners, and they are doing very, very successfully. No problems. Because they already understood the business. They already knew what was of value, but nobody had empowered them. Now they are in a situation where they can talk to business, discuss with them and say, look, these are the reasons I'm saying that this feature should come first, this feature should come second, this feature should come third, because these are the benefits that we are going to derive. And this is the value which it will add to our business, to our organization, to our entire environment.
Yeah. See, but the same thing, even product owner also does the same thing, no? But in Scrum, in Scrum, so the product owner is one of the role, but they will not say business analyst is a role.
Well, like I said, if the product owner comes from a BA background, you don't necessarily need a BA. But it depends on the organization. The organization structure, you and I cannot dictate to an organization what structure they should have.
No, still, Sid, sorry, the little gap. So what is the like a gap between product owner and the business analyst? In what way business analyst is more superior, or who is superior here in terms of domain knowledge or competency?
I would say they are the same. If, like I said, in an ideal world, it is the business analyst who should be trained and become a product owner because he has an in-depth knowledge of that business. Usually, a business analyst has been there for quite some time. He's not new. He has been there. He understands that business. He knows exactly how everything works. So he's the ideal. Only, like I said, he has never been empowered. He never had any say in the matter. He was only working like a clerk. Now we are empowering him to make those decisions, to prioritize what should
Okay.
happen.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm using soft language. Basically, he can argue with the business guys. He can say, no, this is the reason why this feature should be taken first. This is the value it is going to give us. To repeat, the value may not always be money. Don't always think that, okay, this is going to give us more money, therefore that is of more value. Not necessary. It can be so many other factors. So don't always think, yes, money is a big thing, but money is not the only factor. If a feature is going to, if I'm like, I use the example of a chocolate shop. If one feature is going to bring me 50 more customers, then that is value because those 50 more customers will buy more chocolates from me. So getting those 50 customers is bigger value than earning 10 pounds because of 50 customers will come, they will spend 500 pounds.
True.
So for that, it is, for me, it's more attractive, more tempting to get 50 customers rather than earning 10 pounds. Because that 50 customers each will spend 10 pounds, I will get 500 pounds. Why should I bother about 10 pounds?
Yes. Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Nope. Okay. Back to Vijay.
So Sid, thank you so much. It was really interesting, and the way you presented, it was really, really awesome.
This is Chandra. I have a question. Sorry, I was listening. I was on mute. I have a question, Mr. Sid.
Yeah.
See, when there is a scope creep, right? Whether this is relevant to this topic or not, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
See, when after a prioritization of the backlog, right, it goes to sprint. So
Yeah.
during that time, let's assume you have taken 10 story points or
Yeah.
10 use case stories. So what happens is like after doing 5 use case stories, right? All of a sudden, the product owner comes and tells me, no, you need to add 2 more because this is urgent. But as per the framework, right? It says you need to take it in the next sprint.
You have mixed up two things. You want a new feature, a new user story added to the backlog. When you say take it in the next sprint, that decision is to be taken by the product owner. Whether he wants to take it in the next sprint or he wants to take it 4 sprints later. That decision is not the Scrum Master. Prioritization is done by the product owner. A. B. As a Scrum Master, you have to be very clear. An ongoing sprint, you can't mess about with.
Yes, my question is related to the ongoing sprint only, Mr. Said. See, when you have already, when your scope is defined that you will take only 10 user stories,
Yeah.
but all of a sudden they come and tell me you need to take 3 more because this is what the business requires. So tactically, like you are deviating from the sprint, right? Either you take 3 because you are adding 3 more user stories to it, where you are already deviating from the topic, right?
Yeah.
So like but what happens in the this is what happens in the real world, like they say you need to take, and all of a sudden there's a scope creep, right, where you need to take 3 more. So how do we tackle those situations? If it's not relevant to this topic, you can say it's okay, but
No. It's not relevant to the topic, which is fine, but you have to have that discipline. I'm forgive me for saying this. Maybe are you in India?
yes please.
Yeah. So maybe the discipline is not there in India. People are not as agile. But here, first of all, they wouldn't come like this. And if they come, I will simply, if I'm the Scrum Master, I'll say, sorry, don't come to me. Go talk to the product owner. Because
no,
the
the
decision
product
has to
owner-
be taken by the product owner, not by me.
I under no,
Yeah,
the
and
question
now,
is the
yeah,
product
listen,
owner
listen.
only. Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, the product owner, if he's a product owner, if he's a certified product owner, if he's trained as a product owner, he knows that he cannot come and disturb a sprint.
Sir, like what happens in the real world, even though you're certified, right? They don't follow any of these protocols. That is the biggest problem. That is the biggest problem right now. What is happening is like when you select 10 stories and all of a sudden they come and tell you need to add 3 more stories because the business wanted. I am supporting the business only. You need to do 3 more user stories because there is a huge scope creep, right? Nobody
Yeah.
understands it.
Yeah, then your answer is you want to add 3 stories. Okay, we can think about it. Which 3 stories do you want to take out? Tell me that. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
But Sid, sir, so they're ready to remove 3 user stories, but still the sprint goal will not be achieved. They're
It will not
ready.
be.
It will not be.
I am answering to find a way out. I'm not saying this is the right answer. I'm not saying this is correct. It is not correct.
Yeah. So usually,
I'm
practically,
in your Indian environment where this guy is faced with such, Chandra just said, he's faced with that situation. What to do? The way out is this.
yeah. Yes,
That,
Sid.
okay, you add 3 stories, you remove 3 stories.
Yeah, they're ready for that. They'll be ready for that. That is the practically we are facing that kind of situation.
Yeah, but then if you remove 3 stories and you add 3 stories, those 3 stories again have to be estimated from scratch.
Yes,
Right?
so that means there is a problem, right? So tactically there is a problem when I need to re-estimate the whole activity again, right? So don't you think you are deviating from your sprint goal and there is a huge scope creep, but nobody is gonna care, right? At the day end, the day end, like they say, no, you need to do it. That's what you've been paid for. That's the answer we get it always. So how do you handle those kind of situations? So that's why actually I was listening to the whole conversation. I actually, when you are about to conclude, I'm so sorry. I just barged in.
No. You're welcome. You're welcome. I shall defer to Vijay because he's in India and he will answer this better than myself because I apologize. I have the last 40 years of my life I've lived in the EU, right? I've lived in the Western world, which is far more disciplined and yeah, I'm not saying these situations don't happen. They do happen. But this is the answer we say, go to the product owner, go talk to him, don't come to me. And the product owner will refuse. He said nothing doing. Put it on the backlog. If it's really a burning thing, I will take it in the next sprint. But the ongoing sprint, nothing doing. Don't touch my ongoing sprint. Nobody allows that.
This is what I gave as an answer. But there was a huge issue that you cannot say no to the client because the product owner is always from the client side. Since we are from the delivery side, right? So they say you are obliged to take it. Even though I apologize, it's not an Indian guy. It was an American who said, no, you need to take it. And it became an issue. Even though I don't have any problem saying no. But what happens is like one, you don't achieve the sprint goal, there is a scope creep. And two, the team members or the development team or the testing team feels that the scrum master doesn't take any side. There is no integrity in him, so you get into all kind of back foot from the inception of
because as a scrum master it is your duty to protect the team.
Correct. So but what happens is like in real time world there is always a huge issue that does not happen at all. Like that's my question, how do you handle those situations? That's what I was really referring to that.
I think Vijay is better placed to answer that.
Is this a sprint replanning then? Because the goal is changing.
Sharvari, have you ever heard of sprint replanning? Is there something called sprint replanning?
Because then we have to scrap that particular sprint and re-estimate the things and again replan.
I just said it's not correct. It's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not agile.
Because
I think
looks like there.
Vijay, you this is something for you.
So the very first thing is, this is not a typical product owner question and not to this topic. This is a Scrum Master question. How do you situation?
Yeah, that's what I asked. If it's not a topic, then we can scrap it out. But
No.
since this issue is not only for me.
Yeah.
This is an universal issue. Maybe if you can say, because it's an Indian, Asian, it doesn't matter at all. This issue will be always evolving from a different country. It doesn't matter whether it's an Indian or not. Now that's why I was really curious to know what's the answer for it.
So basically, I mean, I will give a very short answer. Basically, we have not really understood the role of Scrum Master very well. I'm not saying to individuals, I'm also saying to the organization. We have not really understood that role. Second thing, there are changes that we need the way we operate. So many times, agile transformation happens that yes, agile is working. Let's implement agile. So tomorrow onwards, we are agile. And that's how it actually works. So if it is really happening that way, people will not get the sense of it. I'm saying everyone, it's not only one person. Third thing, a Scrum Master has responsibility towards the team. Second, product owner, and third, the organization. I'm saying 90 to 95% of the Scrum Masters in India I'm dealing with have never really thought about an organizational improvement or taking it to organization and spending their energies, or also they do not have adequate power inside them as an individual. Forget about the organization. Inside them, they do not understand that is their duty. Second, they do not exercise that because there is no psychological safety that they're actually feeling in an organization. If I do that, I may lose my job. If I do that, maybe I will lose our customer or something like that. So we have to go a little beyond that. Third thing, Sharvari also said about the cancellation of the sprint. Yes, there is a scope for cancellation and replanning from the Scrum Guide itself. However, people hardly exercise it. That's what I have seen throughout my life. I'm coaching since last 6 years to different organizations. Only once the sprint cancellation and replanning that has happened. However, that the people involved in it were really matured enough to understand what I've been doing. And that I have actually seen. 6 teams altogether changed, canceled the sprint and replanned it. So that's what has happened. I have seen it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there is no, indiscipline comes out of not only one person breaking the rule, but multiple people. And you say on the majority of the countries wherein democracy is, so, I mean, it's not one person. And even if one person stands and says that I will not move on the road unless the green signal goes. So that is what is happening today, even in India, that majority of the IT people stop there, even if the signal, people have started moving in. So we have to work discipline factor. Second, the courage factor, that I have a courage to bring in, as Sid said, I need to protect my team. So Scrum Master, do I have a courage? That's a big question that we need to ask.
And
I
Vijay,
think